Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about finding your angle and sweet spot. Every bevel has its own specific angle, and every knife wants to sit in the vise in its own way. While technically these are two different topics, we're going to find them simultaneously, and changing one will impact the other. This process may be time-consuming, but you only have to do it the first time you sharpen a knife. And the more you do it, the faster you'll get. Just remember to take your time, double-check your work, and that you only have to do it the one time. Before we jump into finding your angle and sweet spot, we're going to make sure we have some knife anatomy. So, when you're looking at your knife, you have a couple things to look for. First, you have the edge. This is the sharp part that cuts. The edge is made up of two bevels, the portion that is interacting with your stones to shape and create that edge. The very bottom of your bevel, where it transitions into the body, is the shoulder. The tip is the forwardmost portion of the blade, while the heel is the section closest to the handle. Finally, you have the belly. The belly is where the flat edge transitions into the tip. So when clamping a knife for the first time, the best starting point is lining up the start of your belly with the end of your vise. And since my knife is less than an inch from spine to edge, I'm going to use the depth key. I'll place the depth key in, and I'll place my knife on top, lining up the belly with the end of the vise. Holding securely, I'll clamp down and make sure that it's nice and snug. So then we'll start our process of finding our angle and sweet spot. The first step in this process is going to be to take a Sharpie, and holding it right over the ends of your bevel here, you'll highlight both at the same time, making sure it's filled in all the way down. Then what I'm going to want to do is take my angles and kick them out as far as I can. For this device, that's going to be 31 degrees. And I'll go ahead and do it on both sides. Now, it's very unlikely that my angle is actually going to be 31 degrees, but it's always safer to start wider rather than narrow so that I don't do any damage to the body as I'm finding my angle. Then, of course, I'm going to want to take my depth key out and store that for later so that my diamond stones don't run into it. So now, using your highest grit diamond stone and the widest angle that you can on your sharpener, you're just going to do a couple light strokes to see where the Sharpie's being removed. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So, upon closer inspection, I see that I've removed the Sharpie just from the very edge of my knife, which is good, but I want to get as much of that shoulder as I can as well. So I'm going to start making my way in further, dropping my angle every stroke just to see how far I can go before I've lost my edge. Now I've made it to about 21 degrees and I've almost perfectly removed my Sharpie down the length of my bevel on this side. The one thing you'll want to take in mind when you're doing a knife for the first time is that it might not be perfect down the full length of the blade. The goal here is to find the point where you are removing the most Sharpie from that side. If while you're going through this process you start to notice that the Sharpie is being removed from the shoulder of your blade without actually being removed from the edge of your knife, it just means that your angle might be a little bit too narrow and you need to kick it out to find your actual angle. Then, once you've done that, you'll switch to your other side and you'll find your angle on the other side using the same process. Setting your angle wide, using your highest grit diamond stone, and doing a couple strokes down the length of the blade until you find the spot where the most Sharpie has been removed from your bevel. So I have a 19-degree angle on this side and a 21-degree on the other side. This is totally normal to have two different angles on either side when you're starting off. That's something we'll talk a little bit more about down the road. For finding the sweet spot, you're going to reapply your Sharpie down the length of your bevel. But rather than looking for how much Sharpie is being removed, this time we're going to keep track of how the stone moves through the Sharpie down the length of your bevel. So for this, you'll do just a couple more strokes down the length of your bevel, and you'll check to see where the Sharpie is being removed. It's likely that one of two things might potentially happen here. The marker will be removed down the length of the edge until you reach the tip, at which point it misses the edge. This indicates that the stones are not reaching all the way, and all you have to do is move the knife backwards in the vise, reclamp, and check again. The second likelihood is that the marker will be removed down the length of the shoulder until you reach the tip. In this case, the knife will need to be moved forward in the vise, reclamped, and checked again. The best way to remember how to move your knife is that you'll always move it in the direction that the Sharpie is being removed from. Until you find the spot where the most Sharpie is being removed, again from your whole bevel. Some knives are going to want to be clamped differently. It is best practice to always start by clamping your knife at the end of the belly and the vise connecting to one another. However, as you go through the process and you're checking where your Sharpie is being removed, don't be scared if it ends up at an odd angle. The Osborne, for instance, likes to end up at a tilt, where it is a little bit downwards like this and clamped into place. Do what you need to move your knife around and see what spot works best for your knife. As long as you're removing the most of the Sharpie from the entire length of the bevel, then you're in a good spot. Once you're pretty sure that you found your angle and sweet spot, you'll want to apply the Sharpie one more time just to make sure. And for both your angle and sweet spot, you'll want to do alternating strokes just until your Sharpie has been removed to make sure that you are in fact at the right angle and sweet spot for it. Once you've confirmed that the Sharpie is gone all the way down the length of the edge and as much of the shoulder as you can reach as consistently as possible, you're ready to move on to a couple new things. Whatever angles you have the decision of if you're going to keep those angles or change them. For this particular knife, I have a 21 and a 19 degree. So I can keep that 21 and 19 and continue through my sharpening process with those two angles. I can adjust to a different angle that I might want, which might be a little bit difficult based on where you're trying to move it to and might move more metal than you're actually wanting to move. Or you can meet in the middle. This is really only recommended if you're only within about 5 degrees of the angles on either side. And since I have a 19 and a 20 degree, I am within that range, so that's what I'm going to do. So if this is the route that you've chosen, what you'll do is you'll take those two angles and you'll meet in the middle. With a 19 and a 21 degree, I'll find an angle at 20 degrees. So from here, I'll reset my angles down to 20 degrees on either side. I'll lock that in and go forward with a 20 degree on either side of my knife. Before moving on to the next process, you're going to want to make sure that you keep track of where your knife is in your vise and the angles that you have set, so that the next time you sharpen this blade or touch it up, you aren't having to go through the process of finding your angle and sweet spot again. You'll do this by taking your alignment guide and your depth key and plugging them in together. Then you'll plug them into the side of your vise into those same two holes, and you'll take a picture or record where your knife tip ends. Right here, I'm right before the B, and I will take a picture and know that I'm at 20 degrees on either side. So the next time I do it, I'll just put my knife right in and I'll be ready to go. In the next video, we'll talk about the burr.